That's where it starts. And there's since been subsequent formalized policies around that.
Yeah.
There we go.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to my husband at the time went, like, does this mean we need to get married? Like, you know, it's legal now.
Didn't it scare you though? Like a little bit, like I had lived my whole life not having to worry about all this.
Oh.
Marriage, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, isn't a 10-year relationship? And I'm like, oh.
Yeah, and that it was more, and it was that sense of like I thought, is there a bit of obligation because so many people had fought so hard
Right.
for the opportunity, and here we were, you know, at that point. Well, we were just, you know, 2-3 years together by that point, but you know, obviously in a committed relationship, thinking, well, you know, is it a bad thing not to, given that people have worked so hard to make this happen?
I've been with my partner for 30 years. We had to have a long chat. Do you want to or not? And we went, nah, we don't need it.
Just think of the gifts you could have gotten. Come on, right?
Yeah. True.
What's interesting from a legal perspective is that I think it's dealt with through the provinces through property and civil rights, but the charter is federal. You know, it's kind of interesting, the
way it's navigated.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone got on board. That's a big one. Kathleen was here in London earlier this year to speak at the Pride London conference, so, like the Canada-wide conference that they hosted.
They just
Like, isn't that just
now.
bizarre?
Sexual orientation conversion.
Oh, they still
Yeah, there's states.
Do
There's
that?
still a religious group here in London that you can go to. It's a program, and want any of your teenagers or yourself as an adult.
That will fix you.
They'll fix you.
Right.
What, they
Oh,
pray the
yeah.
gay out of you or whatever?
They do a lot of stuff to you, actually. Yeah.
It's pretty scary.
Wow.
Wait, is there something criminal that goes on there?
I think it's just moral bankruptcy. I don't know what that's their belief system, right? So they're trying to get them to program them to think that it's better to be straight and get married and have children.
Oh, there you go. Wow, so this is like right up to date. Wow,
Just,
that's
yeah.
awesome.
There was one more thing that Trudeau has just done. Beyond the gender identity expression of the Canadian Human Rights Act, he's asking about very explicitly including crimes against trans individuals to be identified right off the bat as being hate crime, being labeled as hate crime, being investigated for what they are, but being labeled as hate crime, which hasn't been done anywhere.
Click back.
Oh. Okay, all right, look at that.
No doubt you are familiar with the common set of initials LGBT, which emerged in the 1980s in replacement of the term gay community.
Gay community, of course, was not inclusive and did not accurately represent all those to whom it referred.
Can you identify what LGBT is generally accepted to stand for?
Totally lady love.
Combo answer?
That's my nickname.
See, I want to know, when did it become LGBT? And, you know, Angie, I think you're incriminated in this because it used to be GLBT. But my theory is that it happened on a Saturday night at like 2:30 a.m. All the gay guys were still busy dancing it up, and the lesbians were like there, and you're like, made it happen.
We did.
You know, like,
You know what it was?
Because the women always
In
work, right?
Toronto, for us anyway, we were out marching for all the raids that were happening from the police on the gay bars. I was like 18 or 19 years old, and they were just brutal, right? The cops at the time. Sounds really bad, but it was. And we started marching, and we were always there, and we were like, we're not listed. It was all about the guys all the time. And then the next thing you know, it was there.
Yeah. All right, so.
Especially with
To drag them over. Drag them over.
Oh, I'm like, why is it not working?
Perhaps you were thinking there's more to it than that, isn't there?
If so, you're absolutely right. This 12-character version is employed by some LGBT community organizations.
The idea here is to be inclusive, yet recognizing that it still doesn't represent everybody.
So it's transsexual.
And so for your, as a group, we sort of talked about what language we would use in our corporation, and so we added the plus as a way to kind of hopefully incorporate that as LGBT plus, as opposed to going the very, 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 very long. So.
Transsexual, intersex. Questioning first. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Queer.
Queer. Questioning.
No.
Nope.
Questioning.
Sorry.
Two-spirit.
Asexual.
Oh, wow.
And just for like some people don't know the Two-Spirit. Do you guys know about Two-Spirit?
Yeah.
So for the Indigenous community, so that is, and what's interesting is it just goes way, way, way back.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that their
Pre-colonization.
acknowledgement that there really was sort of folks who embodied both male and female characteristics, and
Spirits.
And they were like revered and respected in their communities
Yeah,
above
they
all
were-
else
they
because they
were-
could, like, they were both
Yeah.
in a way.
They were seen as shamans and seers and seekers. So
So that's
they had a
interesting.
lot of respect that was given to them, and it's interesting because they go back to the historical part post-colonization and how gay and lesbian Indigenous members were persecuted and were basically kind of driven underground because they were seen
Now that
less.
you know the common terms
Let's have a look at what they mean before getting into how they should
and shouldn't be used.
Oh.
That's very interactive.
So can we go back for a sec?
Sure.
That T, yeah. So how is that different than transgender?
I think
back
this
to
is
this.
referring to.
Is transsexual for those who have undergone the surgery? Is that,
I think looking at this.
no, they may or may not undergo. Because I hear transgender more than I hear transsexual.
Yeah,
Other than in
transsexual
like
being
Rocky
used
Horror
a lot.
Picture Show lyrics.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I hear more, so I'm just going to use the umbrella term of trans.
Yeah.
And that's really sort of captured. I was interested that they actually had transsexual in there.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So what is the difference?
I'm not sure.
So gender identity differs. So that's.
And that's an umbrella for.
Because it has transgender and transsexual both
So this is
listed
just,
there,
yeah,
and then
so
it
this is
just,
umbrella, and they separated it out as an individual. So I'm surprised.
yeah. Well,
I guess trans is probably a wider phrase.
Yeah, it's just
It's
an
an
umbrella
umbrella.
term. Yeah. But it is surprising that they included that.
mm-hmm.
That's calling about that. And this is, we had some discussion at the table about this too, is that it's reclaimed by some, whereas others, and I'm thinking it's more generational, but I don't want to hear it
Mm-hmm.
because I was beaten up hearing that. So
The other thing that I find is, especially when they talk about the whole reclaim part, it's more, you find it more in terms of the academic, under the academic influence, so Department of Queer Studies,
Yeah.
you know, or queer theory, so they kind of go into the academic side of it more so than
I'm hearing very much in
practitioners
a,
and
so,
people
in
on
a
the
social
street.
context,
Mm.
Yeah,
and
social
more of a younger
context is not-
generation.
The younger people in our group, you and I were like, what? They're like, I identify as queer, and I'm like, oh, because it took me years to say that word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, I missed a staff meeting about it. Welcome to bed. And here's Kim. Although actually, this is a good that they actually bridge this
Mhm.
out,
Like
that
that.
it's yeah, that, and this has been a concept in our community, is that we actually have to be allies to each other. So an
Mhm.
ally just isn't, that cisgender straight person, is that, I may have to be a gay male, but I have to be an ally toward our lesbian friends and our transgender friends.
And we've come a long way, I think, because years ago, when I would march on the Pride Parade, people would say to me, I'd like to march too, but I'm not gay, so I can't go. So this is and to say, it's for everyone, and it's.
Well, you can just think about, like, my gosh, even just like the participation we have
Yeah.
for the corporation, our Pride Parade. I mean, it is primarily allies, and
Mhm.
that's just
Yeah.
phenomenal. People bringing their can I bring my family? Yes, it's very, very cool.
Language is an important tool to communicate effectively, and certainly when it comes to defining one's identity.
Certain words can empower individuals and make them feel included, but when used incorrectly, they can have the opposite effect. Before moving on,
Let's evaluate our grasp on the most common terms.
Oh. No.
Depends on the plot of the book.
The kids still say that.
All the time.
And I know why. It's good that they include that. That's information now.
Mm.
But I wish, and this is great, but I wish it also had ways of like, here's like a phrase to try to help correct that person
Yeah.
without being like, no, like ways to try and bridge those
Alternative
conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, to
No,
try and
if-
help
if
explain
you-
the difference, right? Because I'm sure that's something my grandparents would say.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that Jeffrey Tambor. I'm like, okay, but like, here's actually what, like,
What should you say?
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, how to approach that?
By golly, yes.
I look at
Golly,
that.
no.
what's the difference between sexual orientation
Gender identity,
and gender expression?
click on each header to learn more.
You must have someone reading these off as well, because if, I'm thinking accessibility. You and I can read, but someone who can't.
That might be a setting.
There must be a setting for
Yeah,
it
okay.
to read off.
Hmm.
That's a good-
Well, and some people read slower than others as well. like
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, I'm a speed reader. I know.
Yeah.
So that's something to ask.
If we're talking about across the board, then people may read not only slower, but if they have reading capacities or
Mhm.
dyslexia, we don't know. That's not usually some of the most common, most hidden ones.
Or different levels of familiarity.
Yeah, with the language itself.
It might be hard too with the way that this is for like a screen reader, right, to go through it.
Yes.
So kind of AODA compliance questions.
Having said all of that, it's still pretty informative.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's
Very
Really
good.
well done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
modern. That's what I like. That this isn't like a 1990s like PSA
It's very straightforward. I like that.
And right
or
now-
gay forward.
I wasn't thinking about
Now that you're becoming more knowledgeable in the most common
It's
terms
funny.
Let's
We don't
walk
even
through
think
some
of these
scenarios
things.
on how you may see or hear people use them.
and evaluate your reactions to it.
So address that question. And we can just play with this. I mean, it's like
Mhm.
whatever. What do you want me
Okay,
to
so
click
let's
on?
Yeah.
let's go no way, count me out first. See what they say. Okay.
Fab.
They consulted with me on the content here. Okay.
All right. Oh, God, okay. See, nothing Frank will never
Oh,
away.
Frank.
My God.
Frankie.
Trust me, I know about 2 of those. And they are called Frank. So it's the same thing.
So it's still, I think, you give more suggestions on how to approach the situation.
Mm-hmm. And I like that because oftentimes, like, we all know what's right for us to do, but it's stepping into those situations where like there's an injustice happening and you don't necessarily know the right way to approach a situation.
Yeah. I like that. Does not meet standard as a coworker nor as an employer.
So that states an expectation.
Congratulations, you have completed LGBT 101.
By taking the time to learn and understand terms, issues, and practices demonstrated in this module,
You are one step closer to making your workplace and the world around you a more tolerant, kinder, and more inclusive place to be.
we recognize the volume of information in this module, as well as the wealth of information left out.
With that said, however, we've laid out the following 5 key takeaways.
Don't make assumptions.
Ask questions and provide space for people to describe their identity and express their preferences, a big part of being an ally.
Notice how we used their? Yes, it's plural, but it can also be used as a singular pronoun.
Best to use if you don't have the answers that you're looking for. Use vocabulary appropriately,
Demonstrating your knowledge and understanding promotes inclusiveness.
and you just might teach those around you something they didn't know.
As vocabulary and expressions naturally evolve, so do the terms and expressions found in this module. Challenge intolerance and exclusion.
You can't be an expert on everything, but you can try to understand and keep an open mind. Understand your privilege. Privilege doesn't mean that you haven't experienced difficulties in life.
Instead, understanding your privilege means that there are things that don't necessarily impact your daily life.
How do you feel you are advantaged?
How do you feel you are disadvantaged?
So I jotted down just a couple of things in terms of feedback to them, or questions, something around the AODA compliance, and then just some suggestions around opportunity within the learning to give people more suggestions on how to approach situations. Any of the thoughts?
Because if they're talking about, are they, okay, is Pride Canada, because they want to turn it into a full course, and I'm assuming there is certification that's going to come out of it. When people do the 101, does everybody get a certificate? Because those are nice things. Like it's an incentive to have for you to say to your, you know, to your people to say, here, once you finish this thing, there is a certificate of completion for you at the end of it as well. So I guess my question to you is, if we're, in your case, we use one of the access codes right now, but it's in your name, everybody in the room gets it, or just one person gets it? Because I'm just thinking, if we're going to have that done for other groups and units to come together, so either you simply say division such and such attended, so by default everybody in that division now has 101.
I guess it depends on how we use it, right? If this is something we're rolling out across the organization as a organization, it could be something that, you know, we do something internal in terms of giving something or give credit in their learning history in our LMS, or is it just, hey, it's there as something that is just an opportunity for learning?
Yeah.
So
Because
that might be a question to ask back to Pride at Work, is what's their experience in terms of other people that are using this tool? Do they blend it with something else, or do they, you know, like, is it used on its own or with other things, and what things have they used it with?
Because if we make this entire course, when they say learn more about the full course here, if we perhaps make the course as part of you becoming a champion, then that way we make sure that people are actually getting that as an additional support, learning, more education, more openness around it, and then they would feel more empowered as well to go out and be a stronger champion. Just a thought. I don't know, would that work?
It's interesting because with, you know, looking out, you know, getting the trained to be trainers for the positive space, and a lot of this content would be part of that as well.
Yeah.
And is this a supplement? Is this something that would be in place for people who can't come to a classroom thing, or do we want to have a classroom environment? And it's not an option.
Yeah.
That's part of the
Because
conversation.
for the train the trainer for positive space, what we're looking at is actually that to have that more more discussion generated around responses and around how do you challenge, and when you're dealing with conflict, how do you feel safe about where you are, as well as feeling brave about going forward and kind of challenging it. So I think those are definitely the some of the things that we are looking at in terms of the development of our training, which is going to be for the positive space.
And it could be, you know, do we use a blended approach to people who are coming to be positive space champions? Do they do this 30-minute module on their own and then come to something that's more interactive about, okay, really how to be an ally, how to challenge situations?
Yeah.
So you get some foundational information.
Because that's exactly what we were doing back at OPS. This is how we did it. Was we had pretty much the same, a half an hour to 45-minute online, And then once you completed that, then when you went into the conversation, then you could actually have, rather than going through building blocks, you actually had, everybody had a basic standardized kind of understanding of the language. And then when we started talking, then we actually had very, sometimes rough and tough discussions in the rooms as well, just because people wanted to truly understand what the challenge is going to be for them.
So are we one of Pride Work Canada's national and regional partners? So it says this introduction model is free for all of them to educate and empower the employees, but we only have 15 codes.
What about the full
How does that
course?
work?
Yeah.
So is there code for the full course?
Can you
I thought it was just for the first module.
can you?
Just
I'll
something
follow
maybe
up
to
with
look
Cheryl.
into.
Yeah.
Is there 15 modules?
And I think there's 5 modules. The more
Let's see the,
Yeah, so six, so
Six,
6
yeah.
modules. And so they've completed this one, and the next courses are to be released in early 2017. And so I flipped to Cheryl an email saying, okay, we're gonna be, debriefing this, trying it out, but can you let us know, well, what is going to be the cost factor for accessing each of these? Because that would be the question. I mean, if we were saying, hey, we wanted to know just what the content was, that's great, and maybe it is something that helps us with a blended learning approach, so that the classroom training can be far more interactive, intense, and really looking more situational. So to get that information back from her around cost. I mean, they tend to be incredibly reasonable with their cost factors, and we're a partner already, so
might be cheap.
that should be.
I'm not sure who's taking this training and stuff, but it may be beneficial that, when you're going through courses online and stuff, for someone to read it to you, and then at least that way you know that, because sometimes when you're going through stuff, people just click if the answer's right there, and you're not necessarily reading the information that's there. So it may be beneficial if you have someone there reading it to you, then at least you're soaking the information in before you can advance to the next slide.
The thing is with the Positive Space Champion training, it would be voluntary, and that it would be people who are willing and wanting to learn. So hopefully it's people that would take the time.
Okay.
Because
I do think a lot of this though ties into that campaign that we talked about of just like vocabulary and word awareness.
That off, isn't
That if this is free for employees, we could make this more of a mandatory thing, like a blanket thing, and then champions could do something more extensive.
It teaches you so much more on it, right?
Yeah, like I know so many people who are even in the gay community who could benefit from a lot of this.
Yeah.
A
That-
lot
It's
of
almost like
history
it's and it
piece.
starts with you kind of thing.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
does feel more like that, that I feel like if it is some version of free, then we could use it in that way for the people who wouldn't voluntarily seek out this information or participate in something,
Yeah.
because those are the ones that probably need it the most. And the people who are voluntary can then get the more extensive training on how to be a champion. Because
Although,
Yeah.
I mean, just a counter argument on
Yeah,
that,
you have to check that.
if you really want though to look for the allies, making it voluntary initially might be.
Yeah.
And that's, I
Yeah.
believe that is our approach when we're looking at
Mhm.
the positive spaces.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to be, the word is
Yeah,
out.
absolutely. But I think this is a great primer even for anybody, whether they want to be an ally or not. Just like, this is what the workplace will be. Whether you like it or not, we're going to be accepting of people.
Yeah.
And this is the language that it isn't appropriate.
Yeah, and it does talk about standard behavior, right,
Yeah.
or expectations.
All of that isn't something that people ask on a day-to-day basis. Like we talk about it,
Yeah.
but, the average person.
Well, a lot of people are embarrassed because they don't know, right?
Yeah.
And,
Even in the gay community,
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
the Two-Spirit, I didn't realize that.
yeah.
Well, even the conversation around transsexual and transgender, I think that in itself is very critical, because unless a person with a lived experience is there talking about it and recognizing also that lived experience for that person is that individual's unique story. So we again have to be very, very mindful that not one person's story is going to be the story of everybody else as well. So it's important that we don't just get everybody all under the same, that if you've met one transgender person or one person who identifies as transsexual, then it means you've met them all.
Cool. Well, sensitive to people's time, we've hit our hour mark, so this is great. We got through, so we've got